Yeah, recognize the kid.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. So we learned for continued refuah for Taiba Reiza Bas Hinda, great zivugim for their daughter and grandchildren. We are sponsored by Baruch Ian. Sponsored by Baruch Ian. I haven't seen Baruch this week. Baruch Ian, Lili Nishmas Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther Bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKohen, and Rafur Shalema for Liba Bas Anya. We are sponsored by for the spiritual, emotional, physical protection of Yeshua Menachem Mendel ben Bela Shendel Rivka, by Shalom Fogli and Nishmas Yaakov Zeb ben Yodaya, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas Gad, Yosef ben Zion ben Yaakov Zev, and for a great shidduch for Chayat Tzivya Bas Shoshana Gittel. We're sponsored by Eddie Chazan, who really knows. He says he says he's somewhere in Carolina, but wherever he is, he's sponsoring the share for the safety of Klal Yisrael and for the Nitzachon of the IDF and their safety by Menachem Umansky, and all those that are looking for a zivik should find it quickly and easily. As you heard me, those that were on early heard me thank my mother for giving birth to me, as tonight is Yud Beis Av. It's my Hebrew birthday, and we have a tradition in our family based on the Ben Ish Chai, who says that a person's mazel is stronger on their birthday. So we have a minig that we give a bracha. The last 10 years of my first Rebbitzon's life, mamish, from early in the morning till late in the day, she used to ask me if she could still give brachas till 72. Mamish, people were ringing the phone throughout the day to get a bracha from her. I'm not on that madrega, but I can also give you from Umka Delibi that everybody here who are wonderful people, Hashem should bless you, that you should be healthy. We all should be healthy. Know that we're healthy, not have any scares. We should have Hatzlach and Ruchnias and Gashmias, sweet Shalom Bayis, Nachas from Dairis of children, make good shidduchim, have healthy babies, and sweet Shalom Bayis, Parnasa, Berevacha, Bekavod. Our learning should be good, and we should all see the Mashiach Tzidkenu b'mher v'yameinu. Amen. Okay, so we're holding on the top of Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph at the new Mishnah. Sholosh Hasher is saying there's 3 varieties of idolatrous trees. Ilon shenotu mitchila l'shem avodas kechavim, a tree that was initially planted for idolatrous purposes, is aser. Such a tree is aser, and if it's owned by a yid, it's aser forever. A guy could be mavatal it, but if it's owned by a yid, it's aser forever. Harizu asura. Gidoi upisloi l'shem avodas kechavim. If you had a tree that the guy planted for agricultural purposes, but then he pruned it and trimmed it that the growth should be for idolatrous purposes, so then v'hichlif, if it grew a new growth, so now if a yid buys it, noitel mashe hichlif, all he has to do is remove and destroy the stuff that grew, and the rest is permitted. Himid tachtea avodas kechavim, if the guy put underneath the tree a getchka, v'notla, and then took it away, then harizum teres, the tree is completely permitted. Now, here the Gemara, don't get too attached to this, it's only the Havamina, but in the Havamina, the Gemara adds over here a caveat. When do we say that if you trim it and you prune it, the new growth is aser. Imrei debei Rabbi Yanai, they said in the academy of Rabbi Yanai, v'hu shehivrich, that's only if he, hivrich means we took it's called layering. It's from the lashon of berach, to kneel. He took something from the tree, bent it into the ground so that it should take root, a new root, or v'hirkiv, or he grafted begufay shalila, says the Gemara. But we learned in the Mishnah that's enough. He doesn't have to do a maisa with the tree. It's enough if he trims it or he prunes it. V'anan gidul upislay tanan. Ela ki itma de Rabbi Yanai, it was legabe being mavatalit, linyan bitalit ma. The afal gav, even though the hivrich v'herkiv, even if the guy layered it into the ground or grafted onto the tree, begufay shel ilan, ki notel ma'ashehichlef, when the yid takes away the new growth, shaperdami, the yid could use the rest of the tree. The mouth the same. I might think, Kevin the hivrich v'herkiv, since he layered or grafted begufay shel ilan, maybe it converts the whole tree into Avoda Zara. Kilu shenatu mitchila dami. It's as if he planted it at first. V'litzer kula, and the whole tree could be aser. And of course, then the yid, once it's owned by a yid, it could never become permitted. Kamash malan, that if you remove the new stuff, the rest is permitted. Now, Amar Shmuel, we need a volunteer for this. So Mark is here bright and early. So Amar Shmuel, and don't think I don't notice, 2 days in a row, Mark. Very, very praiseworthy. Very praiseworthy. Amar Shmuel, Hamishtachav el ilan. If, now, Mark is not a guy, but if Ike bows down to a tree, Toisvaseha asura, its addition, that which grows more, is also. So the Gemara says, but we learned that the only time the growth is aser is if he does a maisa, if he's gidai upislai, if he trims it and he prunes it. Maser Rabbi Eliezer gidai upislai la'avedis kechavim v'hechlef, and then it grows noitel ma'ashehechlef. But the implication is gidai upislai in only if he trims it, prunes it, and trims it, like gidai upislai like. So the Gemara says, Amalach Shmuel, Hamani Rabbanani. Our mission is going according to the rabbis that hold that Ilan Shenatu Ulbesayf Avdu, a tree that was planted beheter and then it was worshipped, is mutter. Because since it's mechubal karka, you can't answer it. But the Mishnah is telling you, but if you do a maisa to it, if you prune it or you trim it, then it becomes aser even according to Rabbana. However, Shmuel da'amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda da'amar ilan shenatul b'seif avdu az. That tree that was planted beheter and then is worshipped, even if you just bow down, is aser. So now the Gemara asks, maybe everybody holds that a tree that was planted beheter and then is worshipped, the growth afterwards is forbidden. And the only question is the original part forbidden? Says the Gemara, Maskor of Ashi mimayd Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan, b'Taisvus pligi, and the addition and the Rabbanan hold that if it was planted beheter, even the addition is permitted because since it's mechubal karka, you can't aser it. Dilma, perhaps Taisvus l'divrei akal aser. Everybody holds that if you bow down to it, the new growth is aser. Ube'ikrai pligi. They argue whether when you bow down to it, the original base of the tree is aser. Rabbi Yehuda savar ikrai nami aser. The base is also aser. D'chsev v'asherayim tisrafun be'esh. That the asherah should be burnt in fire, the whole tree. Rabbanan savar, the Rabbanan say only the growth is aser. Ikari and shali, only the growth is aser. D'chsev v'asherayim tigadeyan. You should cut off that which grows further. You should lop off the extra growth. Ezo ilan shigiduya aser, that the extra growth is aser v'ikrai shari, and the base is mutter. Havi aimer ilan shenatulu b'sayf avdai, a tree that was planted and then it's worship. Says the Gemara, v'chi teima loy mitartzin anachi. The Rishash takes out the dalit. V'chi teima loy mitartzin anachi. We didn't explain the pasuk that way. The original way we explained it yesterday was it is according to Rabbi Yehuda that he darshans the two psukim, that Asherei and Tisrafun be'esh, that's a Elon that was originally planted, and Elon shilu not to b'seif avdu, not to behetel b'seif avdu, that's Asherei and Tigadeyan. So it's not the Rabbanon that darshan the pasuk that way, but it's Rabbi Yehuda that darshans the pasuk that way. Says the Gemara, well, switch it around. Eipach Rabbanon l'Rabbi Yehuda. The way we explained the Rabbanon explaining the sequence of the psukim, switch that to Rabbi Yehuda, or the Rabbi Yehuda l'Rabbanon. And the way the Rabbi Yehuda explained the psukim, switch it to the Rabbanon. In other words, everybody agrees that even an Elon that was planted beheter, when you bow down to it, the new growth is aser. The only question is whether the original tree also becomes aser. So the Gemara says, but then we don't have somebody who holds like our Mishnah. Im ken gido yapisloi man ketanila. That you need to prune it and trim it for the growth to be aser. Who teaches that? Loi Rabbanan v'loi Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. It wouldn't go like Rabbanan, nor like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbanan, if it's going according to Rabbanan, they hold that by bowing down, at least the new growth is aser. B'loi gidoi pisloi nami taisus asura. Nor can it surely be going according to Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says that not only the new growth is aser, the whole tree is aser. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda ikari l'nami aser. So the Gemara goes out on a limb over here, no pun intended. And the Gemara says, our Mishnah iba yisayim Rabbanan. We have to do a little bit a spin over here, a Talmudic spin. Iba yisayim Rabbanan, that the Mishnah that needs the pruning and the trimming could go according to Rabbanan. V'iba yisayim Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda. And here it says a big chiddush. Remember, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda holds that even in Elon Shenotul B'Seif Avdu, if you bow down to it, the whole tree is aser. But that's only if you didn't trim it or prune it. If you trimmed it or pruned it, then you're megala that you only want the growth to be aser. Iba Yisem Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Kikam Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Beloy Gidoy Pislai, that if you didn't prune it and trim it, Ikari Lanasa, the whole tree is aser. That's bestama. Al Gidoy Pislai, but if you pruned it and trimmed it, Goli Adaite, you revealed the B'taisus Nichale, you only want the new growth, B'ikari Lanoi Nichale. Or you could learn it's going according to the Rabbana. Ibayasema Rabbana. Gidoy upislay itzrichalei. But the chiddush is if you pruned it or trimmed it. So kedaita chamina, I would say, kaven de avalei maisa begufa I would think that since you did an act to Iker Ilan, normally if it's planted beheter according to Rabbanan, only the new growth is us. But I might think that if you prune it and trim it, so you're doing a maisa to the tree, I might think Iker Ilan Nami Litzer, that the tree also becomes aser, Kamash Malan, that it doesn't. Now, says the Gemara, the Mishnah, Ezu Asherah, what's an idolatrous tree? Now, the Gemara is going to ask in a moment, what do you mean what's an idolatrous tree? We said there's three types of idolatrous trees. Ezu Asherah, Kol Sheyesh Tachteh Avodas Kechavim. The Rabbanan hold that if you have underneath it an idol, then the tree at least becomes a Machshirei Avoda Zara. And as a Machshirei Avoda Zara, an accessory to Avoda Zara, it's us. Reb Shimon says no. The only tree that becomes aser is kol she'oiv denoisa. That's if you worship the tree. Umaisa b'tzidan be'ilan she'oiv denoisa. They saw that people were bowing down to the tree, but umatzu tacht of gal, they found underneath it a heap. Amalem Reb Shimon says, dig into that heap. Batku es hagal hazeh, he told them to search that heap. Ubatku, umatzu b'tzura, and they found an image, they found an idol. Amalahen, he said, since you found an idol, so since they're bowing down to the idol, not to learn ilan, I could permit for you the tree. So the Gemara says right away, what do you mean Ezel Asherah? V'anan sholosh Asherahs tanan. We learned there was two types of trees. Says the Gemara, Haki Kamer. Shtayim l'divrei hakol. Two of the three, that's according to everyone. In other words, a tree that was planted originally for Avoda Zara, a tree that was planted originally to worship it, or even if part of it is worshipped, where you trimmed it and you pruned it, everybody holds that that's awesome. Everybody holds that that's awesome. But where we said that if there was an idol underneath it, so the previous Mishnah said that just remove the idol and then the tree is mutter. V'achas machlokes Reb Shimon Rabbanan. Now, Ezui Asherah shenechleku ba Reb Shimon Rabbanan. What's the Asherah that Reb Shimon and Rabbanan are arguing about? Kol sheyesh tachteh avodas kechavim. There's underneath it a getchka. Reb Shimon says that you're worshiping the getchka and the tree is permitted. Kol she'oiv denoisa, the only type of tree that's aser is only if you worship it. In other words, Chacham say kol sheyesh tachteh avodas kechavim. If there's underneath it a getchka, the tree becomes a machshirei avoda zara, an accessory, and it's aser. What is the noise? Reb Shimon, the noise from the phone makes me think that one of my machines are going off. So Reb Shimon says, Kol she'oiv denoisa, only if you worship the tree. But if you worship the Avoda Zara under the tree is permitted. Now, Ezui Asherah Stam. How could we presume that a tree is being worshipped itself? Amarav kol shekoymim yoshvin tachteh. If the priests sit underneath the tree, ve'ein toyimim miparaseh, and they don't taste its fruit. If they don't taste its fruit, that shows that they hold that the tree is holy, and that's an Asherah. Shmuel says, afilu omrei, even if they say, hani tomrei, the dates of this tree is dedicated lebei nitzrfei, for the celebration in the church of Nitzerfei, it's awesome. Why? Because they make out of those dates date beer, which they drink during their holiday. That is also an idolatrous tree. The Rami Bei Shichrei, they make with it beer, v'shasalei b'yom Eidan. Amar Abaya, Amar Ameimer said, Amrli Sabei de Pumpadisa, the elders of Pumpadisa told me that Hilchot HaKishmuel, even if they say that the dates are for the making beer to be used in the church on the holiday, that's also an idolatrous tree. Now, says the Mishnah, Lo Yeshev B'tzila, you shouldn't sit in the shadow of the tree. V'im Yoshav Tahar. Now, if you sit in the shadow of the tree beyond its branches, you're tar. Lo yavar tachteh, but you shouldn't pass underneath its branches. V'im avar tameh, because we will see that although passing under the branches itself would not make you tameh, because an idol is not metameh ba'oil, but the Gemara will say that we assume that there's underneath the tree offerings to Avoda Zara, takruvas Avoda Zara, and takruvas Avoda Zara is metame like a mace, and therefore, since you're under the same branches as the takruvas Avoda Zara, as the offerings to Avoda Zara, you become tamei ba'ayah. If the tree, however, was planted and it is in a public thoroughfare, which it has no right to steal from the community, then if you pass underneath it, you're tar. So the Gemara says, Lo yeshev b'tzila, you shouldn't sit in its shade, pshita. It's obvious if it's an idolatrous tree, of course you shouldn't sit in its shade. You're not allowed to benefit from it. Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Lo nitzucha l'tzel tzela. The shadow of its shadow. This is sometimes you see that there's a shadow, and then beyond it is a fainter shadow. That's called the shadow of the shadow. Now, that which is cast by the height of the tree, that's its shadow. That's, of course, also. The chiddush is, even that which goes beyond the height of the tree, it's a fainter, it's called a shadow of a shadow, that's also forbidden. Says the Gemara, Michlal de B'tzel Kaimasa im Yoshev Tameh. Do you mean to apply that if you sit in the shadow, even if it's beyond the branches, you're Tameh? Says Gemara, it means that Afilu L'tzel Kamasa Nami, even if you sit in the shadow of its height, but you're not under its branches, im Yoshev Tar. V'akamash Malan, that the Afilu L'tzel Tzela, even the shadow of the shadow, although it's faint, and it's not directly cast, it's not strongly cast by the tree, still lo yeshin, because that's considered benefit from Avoda Zara. Now, Ikedem Asla Seifa, V'im Yoshav Tar, if you sit under the shade, you're tar. Says the Gemara Pshita, Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Nitzucha L'tzel Kaimasa. That's coming to tell you that even though it's a direct shadow of the height of the tree, but since you're not under its branches, you're tar. Michlal the Gemara wants to imply Michlal the L'tzel Tzilai, the more fainter shadow of the shadow you're allowed to sit in. Afilu l'chadchila yeshiv, says Gemara, no. Loi, hakamash malan da afilu l'tzel kaimasa, even if you sit in the shadow of its height, as long as you're not under the branches, im yoshev tar. V'lo yaver tachteh, you shouldn't pass underneath it, v'im aver tameh. Now, it can't be because it's an Avoda Zara, it's an Asherah, and Asherah is Metame Ba'ayah. Because an idol is not Metame Ba'ayah. Rather, my timer, because Efsher the Leket Takruvas Avodas Kechavim. It's impossible that there isn't some offering of idolatry underneath the tree, some sacrifice they offered to the tree. And that sacrifice is considered zivchei mesim, and it's metame ba'oil, as if there was a corpse under the tree. Mani, who's this going? Like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseiri. It's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseiri, the Tanya Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. How do we know that a sacrifice to Avoda Zara is metama ba'oil? The Shenema vayitzamdu lebal par. They joined bar par vayoichlu zivchei mesim. So we see sacrifices are considered like the dead. Ma meis metame ba'oil, just like a corpse is metame ba'oil. After kruvas Avodas Kechavim is also metame ba'oil. Now, Hoysa Geizela says, Aram, if this tree was in a public thoroughfare, so it's robbing the thoroughfare, V'avar tachtea, and a person passes underneath it, since it's only the Rabbanan, they didn't say when it was illegally put in a public thoroughfare, tar. Now the question is it only avar, if you did it, but l'chadchila you shouldn't go underneath it? Or is it over, that you could even go underneath it l'chadchila? Ibaylu avar o over. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar Mishmei Cheskia Amar over, that you would go l'chadchila. Rabbi Yochanan Amar im avar, only if you did it after the fact. V'loi pligi. Hadi ikader kachrina, if there's another road, then you should not go there l'chadchila. Hadi lekader kachrina, then you could go there l'chadchila. Amalei Rav Sheshes l'shamei, Rav Sheshes told his shamash, his attendant, Kimatis Lahasan, there was on the road a idolatrous tree. He says, when we pass underneath it, our hitni, rush me through it. So the Gemara says, Hey chidami, ida lekadir kachrina, if there's no other road, why did he have to rush? Lamali ar hitni, Mishra Shari, it's permitted. V'ida ikadir kachrina, if there is another road, ki amar ar hitni mishari, if there's another road, you're supposed to take another road. What does it help to say, rush me through? Says the Gemara, la'aylam the lekadir kachrina. There is no other road. If there's no other road, but va'adam choshev shani. But an important person is different. He felt as an important person, he should rush and shouldn't tarry under that tree. What?
He's blind, so doesn't that, he's blind, he didn't even know where he's going.
That's why he has an attendant.
So that,
Now, when you have an idolatrous tree, you're not supposed to benefit from it. However, Zorin Tachter Yerokais B'Yamaisa Gisham, you could plant underneath it vegetables in the winter. Why? Because in the winter, you don't benefit from the shade because there's no sun. So you don't benefit from the shade, so therefore you could plant vegetables underneath it in the winter. But not in the summer, because then the shade is beneficial. The chazorin, lettuce, you can't do in the summer nor in the winter, because lettuce is damaged by the wind, and the tree protects it from the wind both in the summer and the winter. Rabbi Yaisi says, Aflo Yurakis b'yamaisa gesham. We can't plant vegetables in the winter because even though there's no benefit from the shade, but the leaves fall down and provide fertilizer. Aflo Yurakis b'yamaisa geshamim mipnei sha'navoya nasheres alein, because the foliage falls upon them. V'hava lahem lezeva. Now, why don't the Rabbanan worry about that? Because the Rabbanan hold Zev Goyim is mutter. So since the soil, which is permitted, combines with the foliage, that's called Zev Goyim. The Rabbanan hold Zev Goyim, where there's a gram of eter and a gram of iser, it's permitted. Rabbi Yaisi holds Zev Goyim is aser. So the Gemara says, but we know Rabbi Yaisi and Shas holds just the opposite. Lememra de Rabbi Yaisi Savar Zev Goyim aser, Rabbanan Imrei Zev Goyim mutter. But ha'ibcha shamina lo, we learned just the opposite. The Tanan, Rabbi Yaisi says that you could take a metal idol, shaychek v'zoyer l'ruach. You could grind it and scatter it to the wind. It's going to be a fertilizer. Obviously, he's not worried because he holds Zevazegayim his mother. Oymataliyam, cast it in the water. Amrulai, the Rabbanan say, but why? Afi nasa zevel, the fragments become fertilizer. Nothing from that which is banned should cleave to you. So here we see the Rabbanan hold Zevazegayim aser, and Rabbi Yossi says Zevazegayim mutter. It's a stira. Kasha the Rabbanan ad Rabbanan. Kasha the Rabbi Yossi ad Rabbi Yossi. It's a kasha Rabbanan ad Rabbanan, and it's a kasha Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi. I didn't welcome in everybody. Welcome in Dr. Guy, Berish Gesserman, Michal, Shimon Klein, Yitzhak Fuchs, Menachem Umansky, A.B. Spry, Saba, Dr. Black, Yisrael Fisher, Mo Kushner, Barry Cement, Yaakov Warman, Rebel Yafi. Wow. What a simcha to have Rebel Yafi. Huh. Rabbi Kranz, Mark Frankel, Nachman Chapler, Shelley Zeitlin. We have Daniel Rosenberg, Avigdor Fried, Eddie Chazan, A. Barbach, Stephen Holtzman, Moshe Lehman, Elia Shutman, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Danny Vogel, Avram Rezepkowitz, Richard Rosenzweig, David Elfkat, Michal Avram Chavin, and Ruven Shannet. What an olam. Wow. 32 Zoomers. It's amazing. And Eddie Chazan. We don't want to forget about Eddie Chazan. Samsung. I don't know who that is. Maybe it's Menachem Umansky. Says the Gemara, Bishloi mid Rabbi Yossi ad Rabbi Yossi lo kasha. Because maybe Rabbi Yossi holds when you grind it, and it's and it becomes worthless. The guy, we say, would be mavatalat. And the only reason why it's aser is because of a gzeira that maybe the yid might pick it up before grinding it, and then it can't be mavatal. Now, since it's only a drabanan and it's zevazegayim, maybe there. I mean, since that's only drabanan and you're destroying it, hasim de ka'azal ibad matter. Maybe there he holds zevazegayim is mutter. Hacha de loy ka'azal ibad, because the leaves that's normal for the leaves to fall off. That's not considered that the idol is being destroyed. So there, maybe he holds its aser. Ela derabanan aderabanan kasha. Says the Gemara, okay, epoch, switch around Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi, so you don't have a stira. V'yiba yisayim aloi tepach. Don't switch it around. The Rabbi Yossi on Rabbi Yossi is not a problem, kiddushanan, like we answered. The Rabbanan, that's kidda Amar Rav Mori Berei Rav Kahana, Mashe mashbiach ba'or poigim babasa. Now this is just a borrowed terminology, and that is that when by psulei mikdashin, even after it's redeemed, we still treat it with residual kedusha. And when we flay it, we say you shouldn't flay it from the feet, even though you could keep the hide intact, because then you have to make many cuts in the meat, and you're treating the meat badly. So the Gemara says over there, but if you don't flay it from the feet, you're going to damage the hide, and it's going to be worth less. So the Gemara says no, and you'll get less money for it when you redeem it. So the Gemara says no, it's a wash, because if you cut it from the feet, masha mashbiach ba'or, that which you benefit that the hide will be worth more, Paigim Babasa, the meat will be worth less. Hachanami, over here too, the Rabbanan hold that it's not considered a benefit that it's under the tree, even though the foliage could be used as fertilizer, because the benefit that you get from the foliage is counteracted and is canceled by the fact that the necessary sunlight in the winter is deprived by the shade of the tree. And therefore, mashmashbiach banavoya, what you would profit from the foliage, poigim betzel, you lose because the tree takes away some necessary sunlight in the winter, and therefore in the summation there's no benefit from the tree, and therefore it is mutter. Rabbi said we're going to stop over here now. We did the Mishnah Yomis already. I'll remind you that tomorrow night, when I hope to be back in the country, we will have the Chumash here as well, which will be sponsored by Dr. Black. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.